Hello, lovely friend. I am Dr. Mary Barson.
And I'm Dr. Lucy Burns.
And this is the Real Health and Weight Loss Podcast. Hello, lovely friend. Dr. Mary here. And today I am joined by a very special guest. We have got the wonderful Judy McKay here with us, who is currently doing our 12-week mind-body rebalance and has an amazing story to tell. Judy describes herself as an older woman and has here to share a story in her own words about how it's never too late to lose weight and to reclaim your health. Thank you so much for joining us today. Judy, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm very, very well. And delighted to be here to be able to share my story and hopefully help other people.
Wonderful. So tell us a bit about your health journey and the problems that you faced and how you've learned to overcome them.
Mary, I was conscious at a very early age that I was overweight. I was fat. And I think looking back on it, my nickname in the family was Puddin'. And it was very friendly and not said in a nasty way, I don't think. But it was something that I became very conscious of. And particularly when I went off to high school, I think a lot of girls were getting very aware of their bodies, and we were all subject to all the imagery that is around of as to how you're supposed to look and how you're supposed to be. And I felt like I was really large, even at high school. What shocks me now is when I look back at some of the photographs, I was probably slightly overweight, but I certainly wasn't huge, and yet I felt it.
Yeah.
And it got worse and worse and worse. And I think by the time I finished uni and went off to work, I lacked confidence in my own abilities. I certainly felt terrible about my body, very ashamed of the way I was. And I was a very shy person, and so this just compounded everything. I also was a sort of person who had no idea what sort of career I wanted to pursue. This was sort of the early 70s by now, and it was, the Germaine Greer was my hero, and I thought I have to have a career, but I just didn't know what in. And after graduating, my first job actually was at what was called the Commonwealth Rehabilitation Centre, where I was assessing people to see who'd had really horrific injuries, often in the workplace, to see whether or not they were suitable to go into clerical, administrative sort of jobs. And I was there, I enjoyed it, I learnt a lot. It was way out of my comfort zone in many respects. I then decided to travel to England, and best job I had in my life was managing a bookshop in beautiful leafy Richmond on the outskirts of London. And I could sort of indulge my passion to read when I wasn't, serving customers and ordering stuff. I came back to Australia after a couple of years, fell into teaching English as a second language because I'd done a degree in linguistics. And I pursued that for a long time, but I realised I loved it. I loved that experience of working with new migrants to this country. It was very, very enriching to hear their stories. But I also didn't feel like it was taking me anywhere. Mm. So in the early 1990s, I went back to study and I did a business degree and specialised in information systems management. And I was offered a place in the PhD program after that, did my PhD, and off we went. But all the time, I felt like an imposter. I thought, I don't know any of this stuff. I'm not good with technology. I'm too fat to be any use, And those sorts of feelings just crippled me throughout my life, I have to say. And let's fast forward. I retired, I think about 2018, after, 28 odd years in the tertiary sector, getting more and more disillusioned with, what was the corporatisation of universities. And I remember when I retired, I sort of slept for about 3 months. I was just exhausted. I think I'd been in a very stressful job. I think I had no idea I was so tired. And I was sitting outside one day, wrapped up in a quilt, having a cup of coffee, and I thought, what is it that's troubling me, and how do I move myself forward? Because this is, I don't want to spend my retirement asleep. And I sort of thought of all these things. And basically, I thought the only one that I have control over is my weight. I can do something about this. And I sort of started Googling and found low carb. And I sort of thought, okay, what the hell's a carb? And so I sort of started muddling around and trying to find a few recipes. But in the process, I discovered Diet Doctor. Mm-hmm. And I was a bit cynical. I thought, Diet Doctor, I don't like the sound of this. But actually, they said, 2 weeks free trial, no credit cards needed. We'll give you all the recipes. We'll give you a little bit of information and see how you go. Well, day 2, I signed up because I thought this food is fantastic. And I think I lost about 64 kilos over the period of 2 years. It was great. The recipes were fantastic, but once you get the idea of eating low carb, it wasn't the recipes that mattered. And what I think I really benefited from was a very supportive Facebook group. Very supportive, very positive. And, we used to talk about all sorts of things. A lot of them had nothing to do with weight or health, but it was fun. Then Diet Doctor decided they were closing down the Facebook group and they were going to create their own community inside their website, which they did, but it never quite worked all that well. And then they said, well, we're closing the community down. And I have to say, I felt bereft because all these people that I'd chatted to for 2 or 3 years, and we'd always said, if I ever get to Germany, let's meet up and have a coffee and this sort of stuff, they were gone. And so I started thinking, I need a community. And I tried joining another group in America, but it was primarily cooking. And I thought, I don't really want to have 58 recipes for how to celebrate Thanksgiving. This is, I don't need, 10 recipes for Christmas. And so I started really looking for something else. And I have to say, about that time, I realised it wasn't so much my eating that was the problem, it was my head. And I think that this is a really important side of it. Yes, I'd always been reading, during the journey, I'd been reading a lot about nutrition, about keto, low-carb diets. But what I was really needing was work on my head. The inner voices that were constantly saying, you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you'll never be able to lose weight. And I should say that when I got down, when I lost that weight originally, I thought, this is just, I'm done, I'm finished, I'm on top of Mount Everest. And about then, Diet Doctor said to us, we don't think you're eating enough protein. We've been looking at the literature and there's a lot of evidence that particularly older women need more protein. So they said, why not try a higher protein version? Well, I did. And almost immediately I started feeling hungry again. And everybody was saying, oh, yes, we all did. Don't worry, it goes away after a couple of weeks. Well, mine didn't. And here am I standing at the top of Mount Everest looking down and thinking, this is a very steep hill and I can feel myself sliding down the hill a bit. So I was sort of nervous, and there was a very quiet panic started, after I put on a couple of kilos, and I'm thinking, oh, this is the end of it. So, I wasn't happy with the group, the American group, and I started thinking, I need a group in Australia. They're talking about foods that are accessible in my local supermarket. I need a group that's going to help me deal with a lot of the psychological and emotional aspects of eating. I read Chris Van Tulleken's book on ultra-processed people, which I thought, oh, Lord, what are we doing to ourselves? But I also started realising that a lot of these sort of protein shakes and egg white powders and this, that and the other were, in fact, processed. And I actually contemplated sending him an email saying, look, are all the protein structures affected by turning them into powders and so on? But anyway, it was around about then that I came across Real Life Medicine. And I think you were advertising a 7-day sugar reset sometime last December. Yeah. And I thought, okay, let's see what happens, because you seem to me to be talking a lot about emotional issues, which was really, really important to me. Did the 7-day reset, and I thought, okay, this is, I think, really promising. I'm going to join. And so this is the 12-week reset. And this has been a very interesting 12 weeks for me. I found it quite tough. The pace is, there's a lot of material and help and resources provided. But what I realised is I've got to stop fixating about what I weigh and start focusing a lot more on what I'm saying to myself all day long. And in that regard, I think the activities we've done in the coaching sessions, the meditations, the hypnosis, I think are just fantastic. And that's what I think has helped me so much. So here we are getting to the end of the course, and yes, my weight's gone down a little bit, but I think what I now feel is confident and empowered that I can keep going, that I can stop bashing myself up, that I can view success differently. And I'm at an age when you start getting seriously worried about dementia and Alzheimer's and all these things that are coming up on you. And I also now am, an amateur opinion is that when we talk about dementia as being type 3 diabetes, there's something in that. I think there's increasing evidence coming up that diet is quite implicated in some of the sort of neurodegenerative diseases around the place. And so I'm determined. I need to stay strong. I need to stay upright. I need to stay healthy if I want to avoid, a nasty old age.
I love that. It is such a powerful story. And your words, beautiful Judy, you've described yourself as an older woman. And you mentioned before that, it's never too late. And that's like a message that you want to get out there. And could you tell us a little bit more about how you're feeling now? You've done so well. You found low carb, you found a supportive community, then that supportive community went away, and then you found another supportive community here with Real Life Medicine. You've gone through this mindset change through the 12-week mind-body rebalance. And can you just describe to sort of how are you feeling now, both mentally and physically, like sort of now compared to when you started, a few months ago? What's been that change for you?
Well, Physically, I feel great. I'm now averaging about 14,000 steps a day. Now, I know these metrics are sort of a bit rubbery, but I'm walking a lot. I do aqua aerobics. I have joined an online over 55 exercise program. And I love the fact that I'm stronger. You know, I'm lucky to live on acreage up in the Macedon Ranges. And, you know, the nightmare of brush cutting, you know, I've got a creek that runs through, and brush cutting that, keeping it sort of relatively snake free, and I used to really struggle to do it. In fact, I usually paid someone else to. Now I'm out there with the brush cutter and flying through it. And you know, that's a really, really great feeling. But the mental side is what I'm noticing. And it's a funny thing to say this, because I've only once not fallen asleep during the hypnosis, the meditations. But so to say I feel like they're really helping me is kind of odd if I, you know, haven't actually been present when they're, well, awake while they're playing.
Yeah, the medical hypnosis that are included in all our programs are a really powerful mindset tool, and they absolutely do work if you fall asleep while listening to them. Indeed, that's a lovely way to help people fall asleep, and they still definitely work even if you're asleep.
For example, I always remember the day when I walked into the kitchen and I was thinking, you know, it's kind of, you know, snack time, what's in the fridge? And then I suddenly thought, no, I actually am not hungry. So let's go and do something else, not eat. And I remember standing there thinking, oh my God, you know, it's the first time I think I've ever said to myself, I'm not hungry. And that was you know, kind of, if I could do backflips, I would have been a couple of backflips. You know, it was a really big moment.
It is an extraordinary part of metabolic healing with real food, is that feeling of constant hunger just goes away, and you know, your hunger signals are just normalized. It's so freeing. I can remember a very similar experience that I've had myself, and we hear that all the time with our beautiful people.
One of the things that's happened is that I have realized that society kind of tells us to eat at certain times. And I actually think that's really unhelpful, because I've come to the conclusion that I've got to eat when I'm hungry, and not because it's breakfast time or lunchtime or dinner time. And you know, I think when I was working, that would have been harder, because, you know, your life is sort of organised around the fact that you'll eat lunch somewhere around 12, 1 o'clock. And you know, the whole organisation sort of operates along those lines. And yet, if you're not hungry, I would really challenge that you should be eating at all. I also, in the early days when I'd been losing weight, I'd been meticulous about planning out a week's menu and shopping to that meal plan. So I always knew that if, you know, I had down here spaghetti bolognese or something for dinner, I had the stuff in the fridge. And I'd actually stopped doing that. And that's, for me, dangerous, because that's when you open the fridge door and you think, oh, what'll I have? Well, I might just have a bit of this. And if I start grazing, then I graze for hours until it's dinner time, for example. So I think I went back to planning meals, knowing that when I did feel hungry around lunchtime, the stuff was in the fridge. It was either already cooked and just needed reheating, or at least it was there. And that for me was also, I think, helped me get a handle on snacking, because I'm a great snacker. But yeah, so I think that was important. And it was, I mean, the reason I was laughing about my sweatshirt, Sprinkle Positivity, I think it was you and Lucy are relentlessly positive, and I mean that in an absolutely complimentary way, throughout all your interactions with us.
Dr. Lucy and I are very positive, and I can see your shirt. I love it. It says sprinkle positivity. That's absolutely fantastic. We really are very positive for like an important reason. It's not just our personalities, but being able to love yourself and learning to love and accept yourself just as you are is a really important part of health and weight loss. And not only does it make your life better, but it also quite literally helps you get well faster and lose the weight faster.
And I think that it's infectious. I think during the 7-day reset, I said at the end of it, I felt a little bit uncomfortable when you were saying gorgeous people and lovely Judy and it was kind of a bit like a cat where you're brushing the fur up the wrong way. There was little voices saying I'm not gorgeous, I'm obese, I'm old, and all this sort of stuff. And I've come to realize actually it's much more like stroking the cat's fur in the right direction, that we are lovely people. We are okay, and we have to accept ourselves as okay. But I also think we've got a responsibility to actually eat well. And so it's impossible for me to know whether, eating well has helped my mood, which I think it has, and also the inputs from the program, the 12-week program, have, I think, also helped me to get my brain in better shape. I regard myself as a work in progress. I don't think I will probably ever be able to say, that's me done, I'm fixed, I never need to sort of think about this anymore. But I at least feel I have a much better apparatus in place, a structure that I can fall back on if I feel like things are starting to slide in some way. And that for me is huge. It's really huge.
And I think it's both. Absolutely. It's the food and nourishing your body well as the mindset skills and the hypnosis, which completely work if you fall asleep, by the way. That definitely still works really well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That has.
Yeah. Well, I think you're right, actually.
I love that you said you're a work in progress, because I think that we are all a work in progress. And I love what you said about that right now you're okay. You're all of us are perfect just as we are and lovable and worthy, and we can still work on improving our health.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my blood pressure's not problematic, and it was, I'm not, my arthritis pain has decreased enormously. It's unbelievable. And of course, getting that pain under control enabled me to do a lot more exercise and so on. So I think, the benefits have been huge. But if I never lose another gram and basically stay where I am, that's okay. It's fine. And life is good. Life has changed.
And what would you say out there to women who are perhaps worried about their health as they are getting older, people who perhaps feel, despondent and traumatized about their weight, their health, as you did? What advice, because you're an absolute legend, what you have done for your health, what advice would you give those women out there? And they are listening. They really do listen to this podcast.
I'd say to them, look, I believe you really can change your life. I regard low carb as a way of living, not a way of eating. And I think the change is uncomfortable for a lot of people. it certainly was for me initially. It was very uncomfortable. And I think two things. They talk about abstainers or moderators. I cannot have stuff in the house and not eat it. So if there's nuts in the cupboards, I'm there. I'm just like a proverbial squirrel. I eat them. If I buy a bar of chocolate, 85% chocolate, say, oh, well, this is okay, I will eat the whole lot. And I often find myself saying, I'm not really enjoying this chocolate. The sugar hit's not here, but I eat it. And so I think, first of all, you've got to really be honest and say to yourself, do I need to abstain from certain things, or can I manage to eat them moderately? Now, I'm lucky. I was on my own when I did it. I'd just come out of a long relationship, and so I didn't have to worry about kids or partners or anybody else, perhaps not wanting to do the same thing. But I also think it's really easy to actually base your meal around low carb and perhaps cook one side for people who want or won't eat low carb. You can do it. And I'd say to people, never give up on yourself and think there's nothing that I can do about my weight, about my health. You can. And there are people who have had sort of worse health problems than I did who have actually made remarkable changes. I was lucky not to be diabetic, I guess, but how good would it be for everybody who's diabetic out there if they could reverse or at least get much better control over their type 2 diabetes? And we know now that we can. And I get very upset with people who are critical of what I'm doing. And I think the green jealous man starts sitting on people's shoulder when they see that you're healthy and you've lost weight and you're sort of bursting with enthusiasm for life.
And brush cutting your own reedy grass.
And, doing all these things that I'd never thought were possible. I mean, let's be honest. And so I think sometimes there's a jealous reaction around others. And I think you can only do so much to help people, but they've actually got to be the ones that do the hard yards to change.
Yeah, you can't control other people.
No, you cannot. You cannot. And the other thing I would say to older women is do not go shopping in the supermarket when you're hungry.
Love that advice.
Yeah. Don't ever do it. And they always say stick to the perimeter of a supermarket where, the fresh meats and fruits and seafoods are. But for God's sake, stop when you get to that wall of ice cream and fish fingers and crumbed this and, pies and everything else. Don't go to that bit.
No.
But yes, stick to the perimeters.
Love
and
it.
It's interesting because I noticed, why am I going down a central corridor of a supermarket? It's usually for laundry liquid or toilet paper or something like that. But on the peripheries where you find eggs, cheese, meats and so on, stay there.
All the good stuff.
Don't go shopping when you're hungry.
I love that.
And I think the other thing I've learned is don't eat in the car. You've really got to stop eating in the car because it is amazing how much you can shovel down, sitting at traffic lights and things like that.
This is gold. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your wonderful, inspiring story. Fantastic advice too. There's some really some absolute gold in there from your lived experience. I love the way that you have gone through this whole transformation of not just losing weight, but also improving your blood pressure, your arthritis, your health, really healthy on the inside, as well as your mindset and your self-acceptance, and that you're just really strong. And that image of you brush cutting, the long grass by the creeks on the Maston Ranges is going to stick with me. It's absolutely enchanting, and I love it.
Yeah.
Is there any final words you'd like to say as we wrap this up? Maybe just something that what would you say to people out there who are thinking about taking that first step towards healing their bodies? If you got just what would you say to people who are maybe on the fence about the 12-week mind-body rebalance, or taking the plunge into a low-carb, real food lifestyle? What would you say to them?
I would say to them, go and pick up a piece of paper and a pencil or pen and start writing down how you feel physically, emotionally. You don't have to show this piece of paper to anybody. So just be dead honest and put it all down in black and white. I drew a cognitive map, actually. And, so I had all these things going off. And it was even things like, I don't want to see myself in a mirror looking really fat. I don't want to sit in an airplane, feeling like I'm flowing over the sides of the seat. And I don't want to be the one that's got to call the hostess along and say, can I have an extension belt because I can't do the seatbelt up? All those sorts of things. I don't want to be really limited in my choice of clothing or and so on. I mean, those are the sorts of things I was writing down. All these things that I hated about myself and about being overweight. And I'd put it, and I'd say to people, think of the physical things. Have you got pain? Do any of your joints hurt? Do your knees hurt? If you have to get down on the floor, is this a sort of a nightmare scenario where how the hell am I going to get back up again? I have a robotic vacuum cleaner that always stops under my king-size bed, right in the middle. I have to get down on my hands and knees to haul this wretched thing out. And that used to be a nightmare. It was, a big pillow under each knee and, what can I hold on to get up? I don't find it that difficult anymore. So write it all down, how you feel. Now, if you're comfortable with how you feel sitting on the fence, so be it. But if you're not comfortable, then trust the process that you can firstly get off a lot of prescription medications you're probably on. So, for example, I was on quite a high-powered prescription painkiller for my arthritis pain. That went. I now take a couple of Panadol Osteo when I need to, but I'm not having to go to the doctor all the time to get repeat prescriptions. I'm off all blood pressure medications now. I don't have to sort of crawl in ashamedly into my doctor's surgery and sort of say, I've put on another 5 kilos and I need this, need that. And sadly, I think far too many of our doctors, they don't blame you if you get cancer. They don't blame you for a lot of things. But my God, if you're overweight, you get blamed, you get shamed. And I think that's sad. And in fact, it's great to hear from 2 doctors who have struggled with their weight in the past. And so know, I guess, what that's like. And so I'd say to people, if you think about what you pay on medications, doctor's visits, all that sort of stuff, actually living low carb is not really that much more expensive. I don't think. I think you end up eating less. You don't, what's the word I want, sort of get tempted to go into junk food, takeaway sort of stuff. Yeah, so look at your list, look at what you look like, look at what you feel like, and see what it's stopping you from doing. Now, I don't have grandchildren, for example, but can you actually get down on your hands and knees and play with your grandchildren? Can you easily pick them up and comfort them if they're hurt or upset or crying? Can you actually carry your own shopping out of the supermarket without needing the trolley, to wheel it right to the boot of your car? Because that's an uncomfortable place. And I was there. I know exactly what that feels like. And I think it feels like you're climbing Mount Everest. I got there. But I realised I did what you were talking about, I think, last week, when you talked about measuring backwards. Because when I'm on my way up Mount Everest, for sure, I slipped, I made mistakes, I went backwards. But I always used to say, look, okay, you've lost 25 kilos. 1 kilo going back on is not the end of the world. You've actually achieved a huge amount.
Yes.
The other thing I would say to people is, if you make the decision, make it. You can't be half in and half out. So this is going to be a big change in your life, and you might need to negotiate with your partner, with your children, and work your way through. And you've got to be determined that even if they're not really joining you, that they're not also sabotaging you. You've got to be prepared for that and help yourself. And I would always encourage you to set achievable goals. When I started at 133 kilos, I said to myself, I wonder if I could get to 120 kilos. Could I do that? Wouldn't that be amazing to lose 13 kilos? And when I got there, I thought, I'm here. I've done it. Now, could I lose another 10 and get to 110? And I did. And then I thought, wow, could I get to 99? 2 digits, not 3. And I did. So I never set myself a target of more than 10 kilos at a time. And I would say, if you'd said to me, all right, you're 133, you've got to get to 69 to be a normal weight, I would have said, oh, forget it. I can't do that. So do it in incremental bits and celebrate your achievements.
Yes. Thank you, Judy, so much for joining us today and sharing your powerful story as how, as an older woman, you have lost a significant amount of weight, reversed your high blood pressure, your arthritis, and just got really strong so that you can carry your shopping and get your robot vacuum cleaner from under the bed and brush cut your own reedy grass to keep the snakes away. You are an absolute legend and your story is inspiring, and I love your message that it's never too late to lose weight. And you joined us initially with our 7-day sugar-free reset that we ran last year. Well, we've got a new wonderful little challenge on starting soon, the Blah to Huzzah 5-day body reset. It's completely free and you can join by going to our website, rlmedicine.com, and join us for some fantastic courses, recipes, beautiful hypnosis, and everything to get started on your real health and weight loss journey. Thanks again, Judy. You are an absolute star.
Thanks, Mary. Look, it's a real pleasure to be able to share my experiences, and I hope that, if there's one other person out there, male or female, I'm not fussy, who is inspired to really sort of start seriously doing something about their health, I would be thrilled to bits,
Absolutely. I'm sure that you have touched many people today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mary.
The information shared on the Real Health and Weight Loss podcast, including show notes and links, provides general information only. It is not a substitute, nor is it intended to provide individualised medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor can it be construed as such. Please consult your doctor for any medical concerns.